I'll go ahead and call this meeting to order. Thanks everybody for coming to the April Riverfront Improvement Commission meeting. I will go ahead, so we have the minutes in your packet here. I'm looking for a motion to approve the March minutes. Do I have a motion to approve the March minutes?
So moved.
All right, a motion, do I have a second?
Second.
All right, one motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor of approving the March minutes say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay? Excellent, I'll go ahead and approve those minutes. Next up, does it called city signage? Are we supposed to have somebody here, or is this kind of staff discussion?
Yep, it'll be staff
Perfect.
discussion. So after our last meeting, one of the steps that we did was we actually met with Director Dyson and Zach Peterson, got them both together in the room to kind of talk through what their thoughts were. And I wanted to share some of the feedback that they gave me, and then we actually set up a meeting with Dave and his team, and they gave this feedback to Dave and his team as well. Gotcha. So some of the initial thoughts that they had were, they like the sign. They think the sign is very cool. They like the idea behind it. However, one of the things that they were both pretty adamant about is that they're not 100% sold that this sign design is the right design for River Heritage Park. If you look at River Heritage Park, the design and the overall topography of the park is really a bit more historic. And so this sign design is a bit more flashy, and that's okay, but doesn't necessarily meet the quality of the park that they're trying to continue to develop there. So that was really their first comment back. The second comment back that actually both Zach and Laura provided to us. Laura, I apologize, I don't have her full title in front of me, but Laura really manages quite a bit of our code and enforcement, and so she was also at that meeting, and she had shared with me that because it is in fact in a floodplain, it absolutely needs to be bolted into the ground and engineerily bolted into the ground. So that was something that, if you remember, Dave was kind of like, oh, this sign can, you can just pick it up and move it. And so to their point, after kind of really looking through that model wouldn't necessarily fit this particular location. So in further discussion with both Laura and Chad and Zach, one of the things that they suggested was they really think that this sign would actually be a better fit for somewhere in Main Street Landing. So as Main Street Landing continues to be developed, this sign, the design elements, the components of it, the picture-worthy photographics, this would be a better fit within Main Street Landing. So they would like to recommend that this be tabled for the time being, and that as we continue to develop Main Street Landing, that this then be looked at again and then incorporated into that development and design. So like I said, they kind of shared that with me. We then had a meeting with Dave and his team to talk through that. One of the I would say one of the ideas that Director Dyson then pitched to Dave and his team, just saying that if they are very passionate about putting this type of sign in River Heritage Park, that he would challenge them with actually changing the base of it a little bit, so the design element of the base. So if you look at it, it doesn't necessarily match the design elements that are currently created within River Heritage, and so if they would be willing to change any of those design elements to better meet the needs of the park, that they would reconsider that. But I think after that meeting, it was agreed that they would be very interested in finding a space in Main Street Landing for this sign if and when we get to that point. So that is where we kind of left that off. Does anyone have any questions? Yeah.
One of the points that they made when they were presenting this was where the tour boats, kind of leave passengers off. Is that an opportunity in Main Street Landing also, or is that a little more removed from the tour boats?
I would say Main Street Landing is a bit more removed. It doesn't mean that visitors wouldn't be able to go to Main Street Landing when they do dock, but they will not be able to dock in Main Street Landing.
Yeah.
So they are or they are not thinking of still putting one in River Heritage Park?
At this time, they are not.
They being,
Visit Quad Cities in discussion with Director Dyson, Zach and Laura.
Does that fall under the purview of design review board?
Yes, so there are many review boards that this would need to go to. Yep, so you bring up a really good point. So really, we wanted to bring it here to see if it would even be of interest, right? Like, is this something that we are even interested in? It would then go to design review board, and then honestly, it would need to go to council. So that type of sign, we always have to be, I would just say conscious of putting signs other than the city of Davenport within the city of Davenport. And so that's something that we really reevaluate and take great consideration in.
But also a Main Street landing would also have to go through the municipal, right?
It would.
so are they going back to the drawing board or are they,
I think for right now, they're gonna table it and wait for further development and design with Main Street Landing. So that's really what I think we're currently waiting on is further development for Main Street Landing as they get to a point where they feel, okay, this is the right time to implement signage overall. As part of the larger design, that's when they will invite them back to the table to have that discussion of where it could be placed, how large it actually needs to be. They gave us some ideas of sizing, but at the end of the day, we would really want to think about that from a holistic perspective. And then actually thinking about a secure location to where it could be engineered and bolted into the ground as best as possible.
What if they could make a trailer out of it?
What do you mean?
Like the existing design is metal, put it on wheels, tow it behind their named car that I forget the name of, bring it to every event in the Quad Cities, including the boat launch, the boat landings, and then take it away, which solves almost all of those issues, other than the look of historic Riverfront. But I mean, the current plastic signage they've been sticking in the ground to welcome the boat visitors is certainly not passing design review either, so. Just throwing it out there, I mean, it's not for you, it's more for Dave, but it seems like that's a cost-effective way they could take it to East Moline, East Village, Rock Island.
Are they using it? Do they want to use the sign in other cities, did they say?
They do want to place the same sign in all of the Quad Cities. The surrounding Quad Cities.
Does it exist in, that park right now?
It does not.
That's in Rock Island, obviously.
That's correct.
So this would be the first place, so it actually, yes.
I said, they said they were in talks with TBK, for the Buttplex or something, but there isn't one anywhere currently.
I got the impression that while they thought of it as portable, it wasn't like once a week they'd move it.
No, I think they were gonna bolt it down, otherwise scrappers would take it the first night.
But it would be more like seasonal, that they would move it to another entrance.
And who is under the jurisdiction of the collective identity or logo of the Quad Cities? That doesn't really exist. I mean, this is the logo of the visitor center. And something like that would need a lot more collaboration between all the participating entities to make something that would be uniform.
That's a good point.
Is there somebody that's in charge of that?
Not
I would think that would be a bi-state thing. The last thing we did was signage and everybody got a color.
yes.
And that took 3 or 4 years in the making.
Didn't last.
Yeah. But I would think it's a regional planning agency. That's where everyone is. Together, so.
I think if you asked Visit Quad Cities, they would say they decide
I
the brand of the Quad Cities, which is why they're,
Bi-state facilitates. I mean,
Yeah, no,
they're the
I-
transport- I mean,
I'm
you're
not
gonna-
arguing. I'm just saying what Visit Quad Cities would say.
And they might be, I don't know.
The
So-
Deer Bee Monsters.
So do they kind of have any marching orders, or is it just kind of like we're kind of just temporarily waiting for Main Street Landing and how that shapes up, or?
So Director Dyson asked at this time for them to table the idea until Main Street Landing is further developed. And then at that time, Director Dyson will reach out to me and let me know, like, hey, if we can bring them back to the table for further discussion at that point. But yeah, at this time, we take it.
But I think Main Street Landing is being, designed right now.
It is. They're just not at a point where they're ready to implement signage. So that's why Director Dyson had asked them to table it.
And when do we break ground on that?
So the hope, I believe the hope is this fall. But I think that's actually probably a good idea to maybe ask Dyson if he would be willing to come by sometime
That'd be
and
cool.
give us all an update on where we're at with that. And
On what, Main Street Landing?
yes,
We get
Yep.
Yeah, that would be good.
Who's managing that?
So we actually have Clay Barrett. He is our Director of Capital Improvement Project over at Public Works. And then Chad Dyson, the Director of Parks and Recreation. And then Zach Peterson, who is our city engineer, or our city landscape architect. It's a good group.
Excellent. Up next, focus groups.
So I'm not trying to put our people on the spot, but I really would like to give you an opportunity to just share with the group what we heard from the focus groups. I will just say that I found them to be extremely valuable. I was so impressed, and it was really fun, so it was a great time.
So we met on April 12th, Gwendolyn and I and Stephanie and Courtney, along with Kent Pilcher of Estes Company and Kyle Carter of the Downtown Partnership. So they kind of led the conversation. And we listened, and Stephanie took great notes, of which I have them. There were there were a lot of joint interest in things. So we asked them what would make their business better? What would be a customer-focused thing that we could do? What could allow them either to make more money or make it more easily? And what are the things that they need? And of course, we first looked at the buildings. So when we started with the farmers market, their interest, and I think the commission knows it, is the powering Florian Keen lot for the Saturday market. It was in our CIP, and it actually was funded and then was taken out because the freight house needs a roof and a number of other things. And as a commission, we looked at it and said, of all things, we have to be a landlord first, and these needs are greater. So, but they're still interested in that, and they really discussed of all the power needs they need for that Saturday. So that was kind of their first issue. And then they moved to kind of like on the wish list, which is they would like to be able to upgrade the stage in the stage area, maybe make it more 3-season. So there's a lot of things that go along with that, once you have that concept and you're thinking about it. The other thing is that, they're very vendor customer focused. So very vendor focused. So they're very interested in the empty restaurant next door for a market, for like a grocery store market for their vendors during the week, and maybe for programming and some other things. Not necessarily would it be like something that would open at 10 in the morning and be open till 6 in the evening, but it would be something that would help their vendors sell produce during the week or baked goods or whatever. And then they also thought it would be a great grocery store for the Palmer students. And I thought about that afterwards, and I realized, when Greatest Grains left Harrison, Palmer, they got a big hole for the Palmer students, because that kind of place is like, you gotta go, natural grocer. I mean, you really gotta go for that kind of food. So that was one of their major interests, but they have issues that as a landlord we have to think about. They have electrical issues, they have storage issues, they have window issues, they have issues with the building. So we have to recognize that and figure out how we put that in. Then we went next door and we talked to Front Street, and Front Street's first thing was, we just need businesses with food. You know, they're trying to do food kind of like over a Bunsen burner, literally, to have something there for their tenants. I think they're doing very well. They also, you know, want something where the Front Street person can kind of go through all the building, and they all kind of recognize that. It would be nice that whatever happens and continues to happen, that you can walk to Antonella's, you can walk to Front Street, you can walk through the whole front, through the building. It's not locked off because that business is closed. And we have that now with the empty space, and we had that really with Chill. You couldn't get through to the restaurant. They have some issues. I think some of it's electrical. I mean, they have some, I think all the tenants talk to us about electrical issues. You know, up in the diner, they can't really have a commercial, they feel like a commercial kitchen because the outlets, they can't plug things in. You know, we heard that from Antonella's, you know, you can't plug in a flyer, you'll blow a transformer or something, you know, a fuse. And if there's no fuses, you hit the switch. But, so they had those issues. So there are building issues, but I think they're very happy being there. They would like to see signage some way that says this is where we are. And I think we've been hearing that from the Freight House for quite some time. I think one of the things that Front Street said that I think we gotta take note of is that they said, we are a destination, we're not part of the downtown. People come to the Freight House because they're coming to the Freight House. They're just not downtown and slipping over to the Freight House. They might be wrong about me. I usually go to the Freight House after a meeting like this, but, because I'm downtown, but that's basically what they're saying, that, you know, they're on their own there and they're doing well, but they would like a little bit more representation. And you got a sense of, I think we all got a sense of that, you know, all those things happening down on Main Street, but, you know, one of their issues, especially Front Street and Antonella's, is that their bathroom that they share is a public bathroom. It's not a business bathroom for the public. It's a public bathroom, and it gets treated as such. And, you know, we really got to think about, and even the farmer's market said we need more outdoor potties. Porta potties or permanent bathrooms that are public that are on the outside. So these are kind of, from this focus group, we're going to probably work on these kind of concepts that kind of meld together. So there is a huge issue, you know, and there was just little things like, the concrete's really slick. If it's wet, you can fall going into the bathroom, which I did notice when we were there, but never before. And there's some aging things. For Antonella's, there's a floor, all the big air conditioning, you know, tubes drip on the customer. They have window issues. They have electrical issues. So we moved on then to the diner. The diner has some special, I think, situation. Their bathroom their bathrooms need to be upgraded. They have a big window in one of the women's stalls, and, you know, it's got a curtain, now it doesn't, so you just kind of look out and others are looking in. That's one thing that with the new apartments across the way, they can it's like you can see back and forth now, so that's a bit of an issue. Their flooring is a problem, the carpeting going up the steps is old and is a problem. They have huge electrical problems in the kitchen, and they have some other things that they like to have done. Their facility doesn't work because, you know, the elevator's downstairs, and there's a lot of space there. But they did have an interesting idea, either for them or for another tenant, is that if we had water there, they could like have a setup bar, which you could wait for your table because they get slammed. You could wait, you could have a drink. There is a lot of room. I mean, they have a partition up, but there is a lot of room on that first floor. Not enough for its own standalone business, but for a way, if you could figure out how to make that work, it would be a benefit. And they also thought a benefit would be kind of extending the deck underneath the patio, which is a big area, to have more outside seating, because everybody uses the seating. So I think that was that was the major issues, right? We told them all about what we're doing in terms of, as a landlord, the roof, windows, then tuck pointing and all these things that are coming. But we wanted to figure out what else we need to think about. And so that was it. There was the little, like, we'd like to have employee parking, and is there a way to, like, maybe, we even talked about putting it on River Drive for them, because there's this huge area out there that's kind of no man's land, and you really can't landscape it. So that was one of it. So the last people that we talked to were Taste of Ethiopia. And when you go into their location, you can tell that remodel's much more recent. It's much more stylish. It's very small. So their internal needs, they really don't, they did not express a lot of internal needs. They did have handicap parking, how to get to the building, because the back is the security, because where you come in on the back side of River Drive, it's kind of hard. They wanted more seating, the whole idea, if we could figure out how to do this patio and deck and make that all happen for them, it would be a real plus. Everything else was rather minor, didn't you think? Very minor. So what I think is happening next is we're gonna meet in May, the group, and then we're gonna take these ideas and kind of break them out. Look at the Shive Hattery study of 2018 that talked about some of the building inadequacies, highlight those, kind of what would pertain to the internal workings of the businesses, and kind of come back with some estimated ideas and some estimated costs that we could then ponder for future projects. And I think the good thing that happened is that there's some things that maybe we can capitalize on. The idea of some kind of signage or some entranceway arch that takes you into Ripley Street for the freight house that's on River Drive. A lot of small districts or neighborhoods, and I think we're gonna get another one in the downtown. Is that a possibility, that that you've arrived, that that's where it is? They did say that there's a lot of needs, and they feel like the Leclerc Park side of the riverfront has totally been forgotten. And that's where, people come for festivals, that's where we try to do a lot of things, and that's not the focus. And so, they all express that in one regard or another. So I think did I summarize? You got
Yeah,
anything to
that was
add?
great. Yeah, and we had talked about the archway, so downtown Davenport is currently doing some alley archway projects. And so we're starting on, I think, Emerson Place. And then it's kind of about activating, and so it seemed like there would be some nice synergies with some kind of placemaking down, kind of going into that district with other things that are happening and already approved going on in downtown within the next, I think there's maybe 2 or 3 that are happening this year, and maybe another 1 or 2 on the docket for next year. And then, but the amperage, just that building, so I don't know whether that's like we get with Mid-American, or that's something that Kent does with Estes, or,
Well, they'll be able
the
to-
assessment, but yeah, it's obviously underjuiced at that building, and that would be no small cost, to up that going there. So that was one thing that we just kind of heard over and over again, is just basically things being underpowered, or having to, pick and choose which, whatever, blender or stove that they're gonna be running. So that was interesting to kind of just was a unified theme from all the tenants.
Yeah, and I think for us, the business that is closed now, this section, and who we're looking for as a tenant and who wants to be tenant is one we're gonna have to discuss. The farmer's market really wants that building. They really want that space. And they're very crystal clear on what they would use it for. We gotta decide if that's the highest and best use for the rest of the tenants.
That's what I was gonna ask, Dee, as you're giving your report, is what's the vision, our vision for the use of those buildings, like long-term? We just happy that we have someone who's leasing them, or do we have a goal in mind? Because we don't want to spend money doing upgrades for the tenants today if they're not the tenants that we want tomorrow? And I guess I don't know what being new, I don't know what the vision is for those properties, but we need to have that in mind.
I'll try to express mine. I think over time, we've been we've neglected them as a landlord. We haven't done what we needed to do, and we weren't getting very good rents, but we're getting better rents. But I think what it is total activation of that building in a commercial sense. It's, to be able to have people feel comfortable coming down, doing business, and feeling like they've had a good time. And I see what we've done with, Union Station, with the taste of Ethiopia, is to have a piece of that that's not asleep after 5 o'clock. I mean, that's office uses.
And not seasonal.
Right.
That's my concerns with the farmer's market, is it's a seasonal gig.
It's,
There are indoor facilities there that go year round.
Right.
I mean, the
a much
actual
a
farmers-
much smaller degree, but yes.
Yeah.
and they were pretty honest. They're talking about, like, their vendors can't be there every day with baked goods. That's not how their vendors work. They can't do that kind of thing. They can do it a couple of times a week. So I think, and they have an extent of how many vendors they have. So I think the market, that's what we have to really think about it. Is it activating a square footage, even though they say they'll pay the rent, is that really getting the kind of return on investment? And I don't mean our investment as in money, but the building and everyone else's investment and return. Are they getting enough customers? And the customers are having great experience throughout the facility,
Well, I
It's
think
interesting.
to your point, it's like, it's the bigger vision. I mean, if that's an experiential place, what things would we ideally like to have there? And if it's, let's say, 2 or 3 restaurants, that is a long list of requirements to be able to operate a restaurant without just a panini press, in those spaces. And if you have that vision, then we say, okay, you could rent it out to someone else who doesn't use that, but you have that infrastructure. And, I'm all about the farmer's market, but I think there's a variety of solutions to activate the farmer's market in ways that are multi-seasonal, that, of course, everything takes money. But, I think it's a question, to your point, of the building itself, that physical property, what is the strategy there when we say activation past 5 PM? What does that look like?
What I thought was interesting, the ice thing, the ice sculpture that we have, like those programming things, which actually, the farmer's market helps and other people help. The return to those businesses is like a $10,000 day. That's a huge return. And in return for us, we have like a program that our families can come down and experience. It's like a half park and rec, half businesses are making money. I think that's kind of where we are with the Freight House. It's like, how do we have these activities that make you feel that park, and I live in Davenport, I can come here with my family or not, and everyone's doing good, doing well, making money, or having a good time.
And some things are irrespective, right? I mean, the roof, the paraport, having proper utility feeding the building, right? So there's some things that it doesn't really matter what we're gonna do with it long-term.
Yeah.
And obviously, so those are first priorities and you go from there.
So is that something we need to discuss?
I think that's a good idea. Yeah, I really do. I think we have a good handle on the focus group component and seeing that through, finishing that part out to help us figure out, even from just a building maintenance perspective, right? Like, no matter what, at the end of the day, we're still gonna need to improve our electrical, right? And so from a building maintenance perspective, that will help us continue to move forward on producing quality capital improvement
And
projects.
bathrooms, that's a
Yep.
major issue.
Yep, to submit. But so that's one part, right? But then, even Steph and I have talked a little bit about this too. I think kind of a subcategory is kind of touching on, what Andrea and Dan have talked about. And actually, to Kelly's credit, I know she's not here, but she has brought that exact thing up as well, many times. And so I think, right, like we have two kind of components, and I think as a group, if we could start working through that component as well, while also thinking about, I would just throw out there, thinking about the whole riverfront too, right? And not just necessarily the freight house. I loved what Dee had brought up too, even about like Leclerc Park. I think that's even like a sub-project that we could be working on with Parks and Recreation and the development of Leclerc Park, and how do we marry that long-term to Main Street Landing, right? That's really like a partnership. So I don't know if, what would be helpful from our end, but we could even, Steph and I could even start thinking about some subcategories to consider and try to work through over the next year.
So our immediate issue, more or less, is to decide whether we want to let the farmer's market take over that space or have another rental in that space. Isn't that right? Is that what we're talking about?
Well, that's something that the staff, I mean, it's available almost soon.
It is available, but what I would say is we are still waiting on their proposal. We have not received their proposal yet. I know that Missy had come and talked to the group about submitting a proposal. So I would ask Stephanie to take the lead in reaching out to Missy and asking for their proposal. I think really that's the first step, is getting that proposal in hand to truly understand in writing what it is that they want to accomplish, and then we can kind of go from there.
Did you hear anything from Front Street about the hours of Antonella's and the diner? There already are two restaurants.
Let's just, they were very tasteful, and they said that they would like to have businesses that have hours that they can rely on. And I think one of the issues is that we still have businesses that have more seasonal business. When it's warm out, they'll staff up and they'll make money. If it's cold out, they'll lose money. And so they might not staff. And so that is part, I think that's part of the issue. And how do we make that a little bit more reliable? And, with the diner, it's, the hours that they have. Now they're thinking about opening Friday and Saturday nights, which will be a huge difference in terms of people. I mean, when they wait, there's long waits. And when Antonella's gets slammed, it's a huge slam. I mean, people wait 45 minutes to an hour for a pizza. So it would be nice to have yet one more business that could serve food there.
Well, and I think one other thing worth mentioning, Front Street did say, if a business came in or if one of the existing restaurants had more consistent hours earlier, Front Street would be willing to adjust when they're open, to extend their hours. As long as, there was somebody else that was open.
I think it's hard when when you don't have food, it's hard to think about opening before 3:00 with alcohol. It's just maybe not the clientele you really want during the other part of the day, right? Unless, maybe taking a beer class or something.
But meanwhile, we can put some light refracting film in the women's bathroom and spend $100 and 10 minutes and put a tick mark in the one column. I mean, that should be addressed. I mean, that's easy, right? I mean.
Yeah, so you bring up a really good point, Dan, there were some really good conversations that came from having an in-person conversation that were quick. And I don't mean to say quick fixes, I mean things that we have the capability to do in-house from a facilities maintenance standpoint. So, just to bring one of those things to light, there is behind Front Street, there is like this fence. And apparently, like within the fence, oftentimes they might find people who don't belong in that area. And also it has become an area where like trash has just kind of gathered. And so after we heard that, we didn't know that. And so it wasn't until we heard that Steph and I started talking, we're like, let's call facilities maintenance. And then our facilities maintenance team was like, we'd love to take that fence down. We'd love to clean that space up. And so we already have a date set in mid-May for our team to go down there and clean through that and also have our tenants participate in that to gather, whatever belongs to them so that we can clean out that space. So I think a lot of things like that,
Is there a
Good point.
purpose for that fence?
not that we're aware of.
I think it's just kind of been like a general storage area, but even in talking to the tenants, a lot of them were like, I think there's things that are back there from maybe like previous tenants that they didn't take when they left, and so those things are just accumulating. Raccoons are apparently accumulating in that area as well. And so,
They have they have some storage issues.
Yeah.
Yeah, but yeah, that's not the place.
I just figured there was a transformer behind there or something. Or
Raccoons.
dumpsters. That's never where their dumpsters were?
No,
Huh.
no, never.
Yeah, it's an ugly fence.
The city picks up their garbage.
So I think some takeaways from this would be to reach out to Missy to get her proposal, continue to move forward then with our focus groups, and then maybe Steph and I can start outlining some different focus areas that we would propose for the commission to talk about. That's really what we're here for, is to just kind of help you guys have those conversations, but we want you to have them and lead them and give us direction on what to do next. So we can do that forward.
Thanks, everybody. Cool. All right, up next, do we have any new business?
So speaking of, are you aware of things like the fence? The tent campers in the woods west of Veterans Park, or you're aware of those?
Our Parks Department is on that.
Okay, good.
Have you seen that recently? That was
That's-
some time ago when they were there, and I think they've been.
Couple weeks ago.
Huh?
Just a couple
They're
weeks
back.
ago when we
Yeah,
were.
Oh, they're back?
Yeah,
They're
we
gonna
walked,
always come
walked the
back.
bike trail and they were there, yeah.
Okay.
Some nice day.
Yeah, that's, because we're gonna start having some events there in May, so we really don't want them there.
Any more discussion about Lindsay Park and the marina, and any feedback from Mallory?
So I haven't, he's talking about Mallory Bagby, just to be clear. So we haven't been able to work through that with, Mallory Bagby, but we are working through it with Brian Heyer, and that might be, a sub-meeting separate from this that we can touch base with you on.
Need to say what it's about, or just?
We certainly can. So I would say about a year ago, maybe even a little bit longer, I was reached out to by Scott
Clements?
Clements. I was like, Scott Clements, over with the yacht club. And at that time, he had asked about raising rates, and you can go ahead and kind of correct me as we need to. But he had reached out about raising rates, which they are able to do so per their agreement. There's nothing in their agreement that prohibits them from raising rates with their tenants, if you will. So at that.
Slips.
For the
Right,
slips,
the
yes,
slip
for the
leases, yeah.
slips, yes. And so, at that time, I had spoken with Tom, who had evaluated the lease at that time and had given me direction that there was nothing in their lease that prohibits them from doing that. Since then, Dan has, if you wanna kind of
Yeah,
like talk to me
so the
about-
issue is, for years, the places need dredged out, and I sat on the board as a vice commodore for a while. It's like, well, we can't raise the lease, the slip lease rate when we know people are unhappy, the fact that it needs to be dredged out. So we knew once we got a full dredging done, they were gonna be raised, right, for that. And that happened, which is fine. What they also did, is they assessed everyone who has a slip, a membership fee for the yacht club. And that's never been done before. Matter of fact, it's always been very specific that either two separate legal financial entities, right? So you have the yacht club, which sits on Davenport Properties leased to them, and it's a private club. They have a management agreement to manage the city's marina, but it's the city's marina. It's not leased to them, there's just a management agreement. So as always, well, you don't have to be a member of the yacht club, you don't have to be a member of a private club in order to have your boat in the city's marina. And now you do, right? So they raised the slip fee a certain amount, after the dredging was done. And then they raised everyone's slip fee an additional $425 or whatever the membership is. And now your membership is included, and or you are now required to be a member of a private club in order to have your boat in the city's marina.
You are?
Yes. And that's been brought up by a few boaters, that they don't think it's right. Some of them, it's not an issue if you're a member of the club anyhow, but they still don't think it's right. Because there's some boaters, especially in the smaller boat slips, where they got a couple $1,000 because they want to have their boat in the water all the time because they use it a lot, but they don't have another $500 to be also a member of the yacht club, especially if they don't use the yacht club. So, but it's really kind of is that the right practice, or to force people in order to use the city's marina, forcing them to be a member of a private club? And so that's what we've now gone back to legal to ask them to review that practice.
I think that's a fair question.
So that's what that's all about.
So do we have any say in that in any way, shape, or form?
We might not. I'd have to ask legal if we do or don't. Previously, the legal advice given to me when the question was asked was, can they, and I don't know, I'd have to go back and look, Dan, at the exact wording, because right? It all depends on the exact wording that was given. And so I want to say that the exact wording at the time didn't say that they were required to become a private club member. I believe that the exact wording referenced that it was included, but you were not required to. That no matter what, at the end of the day, they were going to raise the rates were going to be raised, was my understanding. So I just want to be really clear about the wording.
If you read the verbiage, it says they will have all the benefits
They'll
of the
have all the
club
benefits.
and the benefit of being able to vote for board members.
Right.
Well, according to the bylaws, then you cannot vote for board members unless, of course, you are a member. So then it is therefore requiring you to be a member, or you wouldn't have the privilege of voting.
Right. So I think that's where we're actually
Yeah,
at.
it does actually say in there, we're including membership. It's saying we're including all the benefits of a member.
Right.
To include voting, which then therefore you're a member. And I showed up, they didn't even ask. Well, the last time I was there, they're like, oh, here's your membership card. Where I haven't been a member for the last couple of years. So, I mean, so it wasn't you get the benefits, you may or may not be a member. It's, no, you're a member and here's your card.
So that's gonna be legal to sort out. I think our next step is if we don't like it, it's when these leases come due, if we wanna change them. But I think we're really on the sideline right now until it gets interpreted.
The lease of, what do you mean when the lease comes due?
Well, I think we have ground leases,
We do.
don't we?
We
With
do have
them.
a lease with them.
Sure, but it's a pretty long term.
It is, but it can be reevaluated.
Right. I think the management agreement was like a 100-year agreement made back, 40 years ago or whatever, so.
Yes.
It's a long-term agreement, but certainly it can be reevaluated.
I feel like we got off pretty well because they had to do the building.
There was one time a few years ago, I was speaking to the mayor about an issue with the yacht club, and he was like, well, why should the city be concerned with what happens with a private club? So again, it's a private club, not the city's business per se, that aspect of it. And I'm like, well, the city doesn't have any involvement really by their own doing, right? The city, the Riverfront Improvement Commission, because it's the city's marina, could have more involvement, could have someone auditing the board meetings or have some involvement. There's just been a choice probably more under the previous, the roles, the previous people that had your roles just, didn't have that involvement, but not that there couldn't be. That's all I have.
So the marine specialties lease approval.
Yes, so one thing that I just wanted to bring this up to the group, so, previously, we've actually just approved the marine specialties lease about a year ago. And at that time, we raised them the 5% like we normally do. But I will say it has been customary that we will raise the 5% and then we allow for a 3-year lease. Without divulging too much information, that tenant at the time had asked me if we could only do a 1-year lease, just given some health concerns. And so we had agreed to a 1-year lease as a commission. He would like to ask if we would honor that 3-year lease component and continue on for 2 more years at the same rate, the same 5% increase. So I would ask the commission to please consider that. I will tell you, he's a great tenant, he's great to work with, given all the construction that's going on right now on River Drive. Like Chad and his wife are fantastic, and I would just ask and hope that we could honor that lease for 2 more years at the same rate.
Have we been doing escalators on other leases now with the 5%? Have there been like an annual or not?
No, so we've just done the 5% in year 1 and then just kept it consistent in year 1, year 2, and year 3.
Okay.
So I don't bring back the amendment you should bring back the amendment for us to consider. All right, so you want to add 2 years.
I would like to add 2 years, yes.
So you bring back what we need to vote on.
Yeah. I think that makes.
Who or what part, so who's either the tenant or us, right, is responsible for what part of maintenance on that property?
Yep. So it depends on what part you're talking about. So his building, the building that Chad is in, Chad, I believe, is responsible for the maintenance of that building. There is the crane, I want to say, that we are responsible for as a city, which is kind of unique.
Okay.
So that is ours, that's the Riverfront Improvement Commission's, and we do maintain it. I actually just paid a bill for it. And then, we, as a city and a commission, do and need to continue to maintain the building that is next to him. So that is something I would probably add to that long-term planning of subcategories. That's something that I would say we need to look at and consider.
Is that the one that is 2 stories that we had?
It is.
The Vegan, the guy living there we didn't know about?
Yeah, so I actually
The
didn't
east of
even
the
know
two,
that someone lived there until right now, but I assumed it, only because it looks like a living space. But we have since, actually, that was one of the first projects that I had come into, is myself and our facilities maintenance team has spent 3 days cleaning that out.
And there's nobody there now.
There is no one there. It's completely winterized, completely cleaned out, locked. We check on it regularly.
What about the perimeter fence? And is there a difference between 3 sides of the fence and the fence along the river and then the dock?
I would say, Dan, for that specific question, maybe you and we could talk about like a Google map, if you could. I'm a very visual person, so if you could maybe circle which ones you're talking about, I can then do a parcel assessment and see which parts we own, just because I want to make sure that we own that, and then look at our long-term facility maintenance plan to see who manages the maintenance of the fencing, and then I could probably bring that back to our next meeting.
Sure.
Yeah.
We can talk about that, and because some of it, the fence along the river and the dock is in rough shape, so.
So we don't have anybody using that part that we own right now, is that correct?
The extra building,
Yeah.
the vacant one, no, we do not have anyone using that building at this time.
That's a unique situation, because then that building is also within the perimeter fence, so, yeah.
Kind of hostage with it.
Yeah.
So does he own the building next door, or is he just
No,
use it?
no, he's a tenant. Are you talking?
We don't own that building?
Metal building?
No, the metal building's owned by Dolan, and he actually owns that property. The two buildings are Marine Specialty. The east of the two buildings, the one on the east side of the drive as you drive in, Chad doesn't use. The larger single-story one on the west side of the drive, or the west side of the drive, is the one that Chad runs his business out of.
But we own those buildings.
Yeah, the city owns all that, just not that green metal, more pole barn looking one between them and Tallulah, that's owned by, is it Dan Dolan? Yeah, and that place is a mess, but,
So we'll look for the lease amendment
okay.
for next month.
And I'll work with you on the other topics. Yeah.
That sounds good. Excellent. Up next, management update.
So I have two quick ones. One I wanted to share all with you. It's in the works, and so I want to be careful of it, but I also think it's important to talk about it. So Taste of Ethiopia, I think I had shared this a few months ago. They, for many months now, have been considering retirement. They shared that with us. We actually only signed a 1-year lease agreement with them, knowing that that was something that they were considering. They are hopeful that they have found someone to purchase their business. We are currently working through that with legal to see if this is something that can be done, and then talking through it from a lease perspective. So they're interested on a number of different fronts, this new owner. So they're interested in some type of potentially a small business loan. So we're, from a city perspective, kind of looking at that. But then also, again, just for your awareness, the lease for Taste of Ethiopia does not end until, I want to say, October 31st. So this would be something that potentially, if they were able to sell their business, they do have a goal to sell their business by July 1st. There are some options, right? And so some of the options include asking the current Taste of Ethiopia owners to continue their lease until October 31st, a potential option, and I don't want to speak on behalf of legal because I do feel it's important to get clarification from legal, but I think a hope would be for the commission to consider breaking that lease and then potentially, depending on the new owners, starting a new lease with the new owners if the business is something that the commission would like to see move forward. So I think we do have some options, but I would like to get further guidance from legal to provide you what those options really are.
Does the current lease allow for a sublease, or is that part of what they're looking
It
at?
does not.
Yeah.
We do not allow for subleasing. All right. Any questions on that one? No? Okay. And then the second one, this one's a little bit harder, but it's something that I know that those of you who have been on the commission, and at least as long as I have been the liaison, have been made aware of. And so for many years now, we have been working with the diner on their lease agreement. So we come to find that they are behind on their lease, a pretty substantial amount. And they then find a way to make good and makes a payment on those lease, but then they seem to go back right to where they started. And so we have had a very difficult time maintaining a consistent lease payment on a regular basis. We have, I have met with them, at least since I've been here, 3 times in person, just over the last year, actually, to talk through that. And again, like I would tell you, I will meet with them, and then I have seen substantial funds come in to make good on those payments, but then again, it falls back and it falls short. So since then, what we have done is we had a meeting, I would say it was 2 weeks ago?
Mm-hmm.
2 weeks ago, our legal team, our assistant director of finance, myself, Stephanie, and the owner of the diner all met together and talked through a plan that would make her whole and what that would require her to do from a monthly standpoint in terms of payments by the end of, and her lease, I believe, is October as well.
Yeah.
I want to say it's October as well. So So, at the end of the day, what I'll say here and what I said to Tara and what our team feels really strongly about is we always want our small businesses to succeed. We never want to see a small business not succeed. It is always our goal to help keep them informed, help develop payment plans for them, help them as best we can. But this has been a pattern of inconsistency, and so we are at a point where I would say that we're working with them. They are actively working with us. I want to be very clear about that. They are actively working with us to make those payments and make whole on those payments. But something that I want us to be aware of is that I would recommend for you to think about if it would be in our best interest to continue a lease without being made whole. And I say that because there was a lease prior made without it being whole. So, and that was before me. So they were behind, there was a document to get them whole. It was not fulfilled. And that was, there, you may have questions, well, if it wasn't fulfilled at that time, well then why was something not done? I will tell you that was actually during the transition, between myself and Steve. So I feel that may have, fallen through the cracks a bit there, but at the same time, we picked it back up. We've since looked at that, we've since reevaluated it. They're actively working with us, and we hope that they are made whole by the time it's time for them to get a new lease. In the meantime, I will be giving you monthly updates on where they stand so that we can talk through that a little bit further as we near the end of their lease.
And their lease goes to October?
I believe so.
I think it's end of October.
End of October.
Yeah.
So they have about 5 or 6 months to pay everything back and play current rent.
Correct.
And when's their first payment due?
The first payment is due at the end of this month.
We'll know soon.
And that also gives them the summer, which I would assume is their peak time because the weather should be better. So if they can't make it then, they're not gonna make it, probably.
They've implemented some new hours and
Yep.
we're very hopeful that they will succeed. And again, we want them to succeed, but we also wanted you all to be aware of where they stand currently.
Does that bring into question whether the 5% increase on a new lease is negotiable too?
For them?
Yeah.
I think we would need to look at we did a market analysis, a benchmark analysis on all of the leases. And so without looking at that, I'd wanna like reevaluate that. It's hard, it's really hard, right? Because,
Yeah, you gotta be consistent.
right, you've gotta be consistent. We want our small business to be there, but we've also, I think as a commission, or at least, we've learned pretty much the hard way that there's just so many facility maintenance improvements that need to be done on that building. And in order to continue to do those, we need to generate funding to be able to do those. So part of what they pay for helps to generate funding to be able to provide them with a quality building.
The window replacement's gonna be a huge impact on them though,
Yes, yeah.
as you replace those big windows.
Just out of curiosity, do you have people asking about what space the city might have to lease on a regular basis or at all? Or is it not until a building is vacant and advertised do people reach out to you?
No, people, I would say in the summer months, I get many more calls. But in the winter months, I get a call at least once a month, if not more. But in the summer months, we do. I think, last summer, and this kind of goes back to what Dee said, let's get Missy's, submission because we have asked her for that and are waiting on that. And so I think we need to just give her a deadline. We need her submission by the end of next month.
Yeah, I think though for us, the commission, we need maybe your judgment on what kinds of people have approached you and how easily you think we would run it and would we actually have somewhat of a competition to pick from? I mean, that would be nice to know as we look at that proposal. You don't have to answer that tonight. I mean, I think you guys should really think about it and look who's called and kind of give us from a staff perspective
Before we
what,
make a final decision on whether we want to give it to the farmer's market or some other entity, it'd be nice if we had some idea, yeah.
Yeah. I think too, something else to consider is if you, part of that too though is, I would recommend getting a realtor in that area and bringing in a professional. Honestly, that's not what I do.
Sure.
And so I can give you a spreadsheet of everyone who's contacted me.
Knocking your door down to try to get in there though.
Yeah, I can
I'm not
give you a
sure.
spreadsheet
We don't
of
need it.
everyone who's contacted me, but I think part of it too is I really believe that if that space was actually marketed for rent, I think you could.
Right. If you're getting that much interest and
Right,
not being marketed,
right,
what's the
so-
interest if it's marketed?
Absolutely, so
Yeah.
that's all I would say tonight, is that I really do think that if you marketed that space, you could potentially get some
Well,
really
that's
great
good to
interest.
know. I mean, that's obviously part of the equation.
Has the city not found a property marketing specialist or whatever that they were exploring for the various? I know that was talked about early on, to bring in some sort of, or contract with, or something, a real estate person, not just for the riverfront improvement properties, but for various things the city owns all over the place.
Yeah, I would say at this time, it's been paused.
Okay, cause like even the skate park concession stand, this may be a question for Chad, but it's like, is that available if a new operator wanted to give it a go? I know they haven't had luck in the past, but I'm curious about stuff like that, whether if they had somebody come out and say, hey, you know, there's more going on down here, they're redoing the skate park soon. I'd like to try operating a snack bar in the $250,000 snack bar building.
Yeah.
that we all love.
I do love it though, actually. I wish it was a snack
I
bar.
know, it's a waste. I mean, they don't even,
Put a grown up there all
they don't
the
even
time.
have the bathrooms open there, do they?
I don't know, there's a lot of bathrooms on the riverfront that are not open, but,
That's why the Freight House is so well used.
yeah.
I have two really quick things. The Marquette dock repairs have been completed. They unfortunately, while they were in there, found a couple other things that were immediate, that needed to be repaired, so they took care of those as well. So, to my knowledge, I haven't been down there yet, but, in talking to Reed, he had said that, they repaired everything that they said they were going to, made those additional repairs, so those docks are fully functional. In talking with Reed about the Credit Island docks, he brought to me a number of concerns, which I had detailed in my last email. They were potentially at some point hit by a truck. And so are very mangled. The railing is very mangled. I met with our risk department just to see if a claim was ever submitted or anything, and it appears not. So, with that being said, that will make things a little bit more expensive. At this point, Reed had said he thinks it would well exceed $3,000 to make those repairs. And so, in talking with Courtney, we think this is probably something that needs to be tabled at least for a little bit.
And I
Just-
would say that purely from a budget
Yeah.
standpoint, so we're nearing the end of our fiscal year. We've had, some significant and substantial costs come in this year, everything from between, the parapet wall to having to repair, flooring that was, rotting, to updating all of the steps at the diner. So there have definitely, all of the concrete steps, the exterior. So there have been quite a few unexpected expenses. And so given, where we're at this point in time, I would tell you that we do not have the funds to support this right now.
Something I want to, and I'm just gonna throw it out there, but something to discuss later is developing more on that. I mean, to have docks at Credit Island, to have docks is one thing. To have docks at Credit Island to attract boats because you've got food trucks and whatever in that area for them to come and get lunch or dinner or whatever when they're out in the river, you know, which then we can, you know, charge the food trucks and the whatever, you know, portable shops I wouldn't want anyone to build there, but, you know, then that $3,000 might be worth it, right? So it's not just fixing the docks, but it's fixing the docks for what purpose? And again, not just to make things, but from the revenue side, so that those docks can support themselves, you know, for the out years and build new docks. You know, we have to have new docks 10 years from now, completely new docks, right? But the money's there because we've been leasing this land for food vendors and whatever shop vendors that come and sit there that the boats want to come to. So,
And then just really quickly, Riverfront cleanup is this Saturday. A big thank you to Bill for volunteering to help. We actually had a staff member step up, so she'll be kind of running the show on Saturday in my place so that Bill can clean to his heart's content. Thank you, Bill.
is there a weather backup date? Looks bad.
As of now, typically, and this was kind of in the text of what is on the page, is if it's lightly raining, it goes on. If it is severe enough, the event will be canceled. So, and that will be relayed. I'll be sending out an email before I leave to everybody, so that they're aware that if there is indeed severe weather on Saturday morning,
I'm just
that.
tracking. This is, like I told you, this is a Boy Scout camping weekend.
Yes.
And hiking's involved, and of course, it's not just rain, they're calling for like thunderstorms
Yeah.
on weekends. I'm like, yay.
Yeah, so.
So
Yeah.
it'll.
I'll be keeping
make
an
it
eye
fine.
on things
Okay.
too from Wisconsin. The funeral's Friday night, so Saturday morning I'll be able to, check the radar and all that. So, and then hopefully we will be launching the Big Nine, to the press on Thursday.
Launching
The Big Nine, the summer concert series
Oh, yes,
that we've been
okay.
working on.
by
We
that.
have the full lineup done, have secured our 3 acts for the Credit Island concert. We have some really amazing graphics, courtesy of, I need to give a shout out to Gio on our comms team. He has just put together some beautiful, beautiful things. So I am currently in the works of trying to figure out how we can really market this. In a way that's different than what we've done before. He sent me a concert poster mock-up today, which was lovely. And we're looking into some other publicity options as well, but, that should go live on Thursday. And then I met with DDP, on Monday, about doing a little event over at Bechtel Park, which is the little park over by Last Picture House and Dam View Inn. Originally, that was a location that we wanted to have a Big Nine concert. Unfortunately, we're not able to get the showmobile into that space. And so we are talking about, this is our working title, but doing Toast and Jam. It will be a brunch themed acoustic session that will also be in conjunction with the one day that we have both riverboat cruises arriving on the same day, which is in August. So as we get more details on that, I will certainly share those. But DDP was very excited and willing to help in many ways. So I'm really excited to kind of explore that and then also give our riverboat cruises another option of something to do when they land. So that's something that we've all kind of been working on, is trying to get them to come to the downtown space, especially the Motor Row area, and utilize, a lot of those small businesses over in that area. So I will be working with them on that.
Up next, Park Liaison.
We had kind of a big meeting. There was just a lot of updates. We actually had a public with comment again, which was one of the representatives from the dog park. They've been pretty vocal lately, but it's good because they're coming with really specific concerns, some of which can be, I think, fairly easily dealt with, and others are longer term stuff like traffic calming on South Marquette, because I guess somebody went off the road and like possibly crashed into the dog park at one point. There's some South Marquette. I don't know, this is just coming from the public comments, and it wasn't exactly clear, but they were dreaming of some sort of traffic calming down there, because I guess there's some drag racing in that area that negatively impacts the whole area. But there is some equipment coming from the city. I think, it sounds like there's a really passionate group of dog off leash area users down there that want more involvement from the city, and maybe should get more involvement, but they're willing to do stuff like volunteer. Like they had a shed for tools and stuff so they could clean up the place themselves, and then that was damaged in some way and it hadn't been replaced, so hopefully Chad and his staff are working with them, because it seems like a potential really win to get these people to take care of the park themselves and not have to have a ton of staff time. And they seem very willing to do it. And then we had a big presentation of just all the projects that are going on, which there's a ton of ARPA projects still. There's 4 playgrounds that are finishing up. The Fairmont Community Center building is finishing up. The Dose Spray Ground next to Hayes School is starting construction. There's 3 multi-sport courts starting construction. The Credit Island Playground is, I think, starting construction soon. We had a small update on Main Street Landing that I suggested to Chad be given to this group at some point. The E-Mice Clubhouse, they're gonna start fundraising for that, which is a big project for them. The skate park is,
Clubhouse at the golf course,
yeah, replacing that,
E-Mice.
yeah. With a couple $1 million new one probably. And then the skate park is getting an upgrade. They're gonna be adding like a beginner kids, just a beginner area basically. I guess the main skate park is a little intimidating, and there's some hope, I think, that bringing the littler kids and families down there will, I think, mitigate any issues if there's all age groups down there.
So they wanna add another area?
Yeah, and that's, I think, funded in the CIP already.
Oh, it is?
And, yeah, so that's happening. I think as soon as the season starts winding down this year, they're gonna start construction. And they're also fixing and updating some things in the main skate park. And they've been working with a national skate park consulting group and a lot of skaters. They've had a lot of public input, and people are passionate about that as well.
That's good. I'm
yeah.
glad they're doing that.
And then they've gotten some funding for some security cameras for various parks that they're gonna be, over the next 3 years, adding slowly and kind of evaluating, because there's been such a lot of vandalism at a lot of different parks. So hopefully that can deal with some of that. And then we got a report from Dan Sheridan from Junior Achievement, which that's all in the news, but I will say, rather than me go into any of it.
Junior theater.
Junior
okay.
Theater, misspoke. They have put together a really good website, which has been in the media lately too, that's got kind of a day-to-day kind of what's happening, because it's moving so fast and there's so many stakeholders involved. They wanna really be transparent and tell the public what's happening, which currently what's happening is probably them moving to North Park for 3-ish years while they hopefully develop plans for a permanent new construction junior theater. And then one of the things that was said that I found interesting is that there was no because there's a nonprofit that's a part of junior theater, and there's no expectation from the city that the nonprofit should have to fund relocation. That's the city's choice and fault, or whatever you wanna say. So they're not looking to this nonprofit to deal with the city's choice to move out of Annie Whitmire.
Why do they have to move out of Annie Whitmire?
Well, they're giving it to a developer to turn into housing. The city didn't want to pay for all the upkeep of 1800s cottages.
So they're evicting them and they're paying for the eviction,
Well,
so to speak.
the city's hopefully.
No, I think that's all good.
Yeah, they're not expecting them to pay for their own eviction essentially, which is, I was impressed by that statement, that that's not their problem, the nonprofit arm. They can still start fundraising for future things. And there was even stuff like the updates that were done to Nice Wander Theater fairly recently. Some of them are removable. Some of the seating and some of the lighting stuff can be moved, certainly to the old Yonkers site in the short term, and maybe even to a new construction site in the longer term, so that it doesn't feel like they wasted money 3 years ago on new equipment. So yeah, and like I said, there's a website that has a lot of stuff on that, and I've known Dan Sheridan a long time, and he's all over this stuff, so. And then we got a little update again on the Trails Committee. They really need committee members, and they really need walker and runner members. They have a pretty well-represented group of bicyclists, but they don't have a lot of, they want the full spectrum of users of trails, and it's right now pretty cycling heavy. So they're trying to find somebody from each ward, just like a regular board or commission. So there's a website on the parks website that you can find information about that too. And then our next meeting, is our spring bus tour of all these different projects, cause we're going to we have to one-up, the Riverfront Improvement Commission and go to 2 bus tours a year now. But yeah, so I look forward to seeing some of this stuff in person with explanations from Chad and staff. And then the only other thing was the question of one of our committee members about soil erosion at Veterans Park and whether that was being addressed or whatever, which I didn't have, nobody had a good answer for exactly. But that's,
The river's edge is now 2 sheets of ice.
yes, that happened. That's been open for a month or 2 now, and that's, I think, going well. And they're doing some updates on the concession side because there's more people in there, which is a good problem to have, is to need to sell more hot dogs and stuff, so.
Thanks, Chris.
Does the new skate park gonna have its own snack shack?
I mean, it's already got one. So I didn't ask Chad about that. That's a personal, I would love to see it. I mean, to me, it seems like a way of having a grown-up down there all the time that can call 911 if there's anything.
I think you
Yeah,
have ideas.
it's there.
I
Why
see a
don't-
business plan for me.
No,
All right, everyone, that brings us to the end of our agenda. Seeing that we don't have any public business, I will go ahead and adjourn this meeting. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.